The film begins in deep space, where an unknown craft drifts through the stars before descending toward Earth, eventually touching down somewhere in the jungles of Central America. Soon after, military helicopters approach a remote coastline. An elite team of commandos steps out, led by the tough and experienced Major Dutch Schiefer. Waiting for them is General Phillips, an old acquaintance of Dutch's from past operations. Phillips explains the situation. A helicopter carrying a government official disappeared about 18 hours earlier after veering off course into hostile territory. Intelligence suggests the passengers may now be prisoners of a guerrilla faction. The mission is straightforward: track the crash site, locate any survivors, extract them, and leave before enemy forces realize what happened. Dutch also notices a familiar face among the personnel. His former teammate turned CIA operative, Dylan. The two exchange playful but tense banter, hinting at unresolved history. Phillips assures Dutch that Dylan will accompany the team and assess conditions once they reach the target zone. As two helicopters soar over dense jungle, the squad prepares for insertion. Each member has a distinct personality. Blaine chews tobacco and listens to music, Hawkins cracks jokes, Poncho checks equipment, and Billy remains silent and focused. The men understand this is an off-the-record mission with no backup. They rappel into the jungle and move cautiously toward the crash site. Soon, they locate the missing helicopter lodged high in the trees. Inside, they discover bloodstains and the bodies of two pilots. The aircraft appears torn apart in an unusual way, suggesting the attackers had advanced gear. Billy studies the tracks and reports something strange. A dozen guerrillas carried two survivors away, but alongside those footprints are tracks from men wearing U.S. military boots. Dylan dismisses the concern, but unease spreads through the group. As they push deeper into the jungle, Billy stumbles upon a horrifying sight: three skinned corpses hanging from trees, later identified as American soldiers. Dutch confronts Dylan, demanding answers. Dylan insists no official U.S. operation was happening in this region, which only deepens the mystery. Billy explains that signs of a firefight are everywhere, yet there are no clear tracks showing how the killers escaped. It feels wrong. Unknown to the team, an unseen hunter watches them from above, moving silently through the treetops. Tension rises when Dylan slips and nearly gives away their position. Mac threatens him, making it clear he doesn't trust the CIA agent. The squad soon spots an enemy camp and confirms that prisoners are being held there. When one captive is executed, Dutch orders an immediate assault. The team splits into strike groups. Mac and Blaine neutralize guards on the perimeter, carefully disarming traps along the way. Dutch plants explosives on an enemy vehicle and pushes it into the center of the camp before detonating it. Chaos erupts. Gunfire rains down from every direction. The commandos move with precision, cutting through enemy forces. Blaine unleashes devastating firepower, while Dylan proves useful with explosives. Any attempt by the guerrillas to flee is quickly shut down. During the firefight, Dutch locates the remaining captive and knocks out a figure who turns out to be a woman. Moments later, Mac reports disturbing news. The second hostage was actually a CIA operative, already dead, and had been interrogated by foreign advisors. Dutch realizes the truth: this mission was never about rescuing a politician. As the last of the enemy fighters are eliminated, Dylan starts rifling through documents for intel. Dutch grabs him, slamming him against a wall, furious over being deceived. Dylan finally comes clean. He admits that the operation was never about rescuing a politician. The men who died in the crashed helicopter were his own, part of a covert CIA unit that had been hunting this guerrilla base for months. According to Dylan, today's assault prevented a much larger enemy operation from taking place. Dutch is furious. He accuses Dylan of using his team as bait and betraying their trust. To Dutch, this isn't just about deception, it's about broken honor. Hawkins interrupts the confrontation with bad news. Aerial scans show enemy fighters swarming the area, and they have less than 30 minutes before being surrounded. Dylan insists they bring Honor along, claiming she has ties to a broader network that could be useful for intelligence. Unseen by any of them, something else observes their every move from high above. As the squad begins selecting an extraction route, Hawkins walks over to Billy and cracks a joke, managing to pull a rare laugh from the stoic tracker. The sound echoes softly through the jungle. Somewhere nearby, an unknown presence listens. A strange clicking noise drifts through the trees. Billy senses it immediately. Whatever is out there is close. Meanwhile, the team advances inch by inch through hostile terrain. This jungle favors their enemies, not them. They decide to attempt a dangerous secondary extraction point, the only clearing risky enough for a helicopter to attempt pickup. Anna suddenly bolts, trying to escape again. She doesn't get far. The soldiers catch her quickly and warn her that another attempt will cost her life. Moments later, the entire squad freezes. Billy is visibly shaken. Dutch approaches him carefully, weapon raised, and asks what he sees. Billy stares into the forest, silent for several seconds, before finally saying that something is out there, watching them. After a tense pause, Billy reluctantly claims it might just be nerves. Then Anna runs. The team gives chase. So does the unseen hunter. Hawkins manages to catch up to Anna and pleads with her to stop. Before anyone can react, he is yanked away screaming. The squad rushes toward the sound. They find Anna trembling, covered in blood. A thick trail leads into the darkness. Following it, they discover what remains of Hawkins, scattered pieces, no body intact. Anna, shaking, says the jungle itself reached out and took him. Arguments erupt, but Dutch shuts them down. He believes her. Whatever is hunting them is real. Dutch orders the team to recover Hawkins' body, even if only what's left of it. During the perimeter sweep, Dutch nearly bumps into a massive snake slithering past him, eerily calm. Then Blaine spots movement. He raises his weapon and is instantly cut down by an invisible blast. The others sprint toward the gunfire. Mac briefly comes face to face with a shimmering outline of something massive. He fires wildly but hits nothing. Grabbing Blaine's minigun, Mac opens fire, so does everyone else. Thousands of rounds tear through trees, branches, and undergrowth. Explosions rock the jungle. When the shooting finally stops, the forest is shredded. Blaine is dead, and there is no sign of what killed him. Mac, shaken, tells the others he saw something unnatural, something not human. Dutch realizes the situation has changed completely. He attempts radio contact and orders Mac to take a defensive position overlooking the ridge. Unnoticed, Anna discovers glowing green blood on the ground. She rubs it onto her clothes and quietly steps away. Elsewhere, the creature briefly reveals itself, disabling its camouflage. It examines its own wounds, applies strange tools, and roars in pain as it treats itself. Extraction is denied due to heavy enemy activity. They are on their own. Mac rejoins the group and states plainly that no living human could have survived the firepower they unleashed. Dutch turns to Billy, asking why he sensed danger earlier. Billy answers quietly, "Something is out there waiting for us, and it's not a man." That night, Mac sits beside Blaine's body, reminiscing about their past and swearing vengeance on whatever killed him. A noise triggers one of the traps. The team rushes in, only to find a wild boar caught in the snare. Mac, rattled, had left Anna unattended. They hurry back. She's frozen in fear but unharmed. Then they notice something worse. Blaine's body is gone, and none of the traps were disturbed. By morning, the survivors agree on one thing: whatever is hunting them is a predator, an intelligent one that prefers high ground. Dutch presses Anna for details. She describes it as changing colors, blending with its surroundings. She also confirms it was wounded. Dutch's eyes lock in. "If it can bleed, we can kill it." They begin constructing a new web of traps, this time accounting for attacks from above. Dylan complains about the setup, but he still helps. Once everything is in place, the team takes their positions. They wait, silent, focused, ready. Dutch is convinced the creature will be forced through a narrow corridor, since every other approach is layered with traps. The squad hears faint movement in the trees, but nothing appears. Some begin to relax. Dutch doesn't. He moves forward to investigate. The jungle falls silent. For a moment, nothing happens. Then one of the traps snaps shut. The creature is briefly caught, screeching as it tears free and vanishes behind a tree. For just a split second, Dylan sees its distorted form. Mac immediately gives chase. Dutch orders the rest of the team toward the extraction point. One man is wounded, slowing them down. Dylan volunteers to stay behind and help retrieve Mac, telling Dutch to get the others out. Dutch hesitates but agrees. Mac tracks the monster, consumed by rage. Dylan follows close behind, driven by guilt and vengeance. A whispered voice echoes. "Over here." Mac suddenly pulls Dylan into cover and signals toward the creature's position. They silently coordinate, approaching from opposite sides. Low, careful, the predator locks onto Mac first. A blast ends his life instantly. Sensing another presence, the creature scans the area. The rest of the team continues retreating. Dylan steps forward, staring at Mac's body. A clicking sound rings out. The hunter is playing with him. Dylan raises his rifle. Too slow. A plasma shot tears through him, severing his arm. The predator closes the distance and finishes Dylan at point-blank range. Elsewhere, Billy has reached his limit. He removes his weapon, drops his gear, rips off his vest, pulls out his knife. Billy deliberately cuts himself and steps into the open. The creature appears. Billy charges. His screams echo through the jungle. Moments later, a distant energy blast signals his death. Now only Dutch and Anna remain. They run. Dutch fires wildly while shouting toward a helicopter overhead. He's hit but keeps moving. They separate in the chaos. Dutch crashes down a steep embankment into a river far below. water drags him toward a waterfall. He barely keeps himself afloat and is hurled downstream. Somehow he survives. Crawling out of the water, covered in mud, Dutch collapses beside a fallen log, a splash behind him. The creature followed. The predator emerges from the river, scanning. Its cloaking field flickers and shuts down. For the first time, Dutch gets a clear look at the monster. It doesn't see him. A nearby animal scurries. The creature instantly vaporizes it. Dutch realizes something crucial. The mud is masking his body heat. He stays perfectly still. The predator moves on. Dutch now understands how to fight back. He begins building traps, deadfalls, spikes, snares. Every ounce of strength goes into turning the jungle into a weapon. Somewhere in the distance, the predator collects trophies from fallen soldiers. It roars triumphantly. Night falls. Dutch coats himself in more mud, sharpens weapons. Sets his final stage. Then he screams into the darkness. A challenge. He lights a fire and climbs into a tree, waiting. The predator approaches. It walks directly beneath Dutch, doesn't notice him. The camouflage works. Dutch ignites an explosive. The blast damages the creature's gear. The predator retaliates, firing wildly. Dutch leaps down and sprints through the jungle. The hunt is on. Branches shake. Shadows move. Dutch throws a rock. The predator fires at it. Dutch hurls a spear. It strikes. Green blood spills. The creature roars. Dutch follows the glowing trail. The monster attacks from above. Dutch triggers another explosion and dives into water below. Bad move. The mud washes off. The predator immediately grabs him by the throat. It studies Dutch, then releases him. The creature removes its mask. It wants a fair fight. Dutch finally sees its face. "You're one ugly," the predator shoves him aside effortlessly. Dutch is overpowered, beaten, nearly crushed. He crawls toward one last trap. The creature toys with him, circles, advances. Dutch taunts it. The predator approaches. Snap. The massive counterweight trap slams down, impaling the creature. Dutch collapses. Breathing hard, the predator is dying, wounded, broken. Dutch raises his weapon, then hesitates. The creature begins producing distorted vocal sounds. It activates a device on its wrist. A strange mechanical laugh echoes. Dutch realizes the danger. He runs. A blinding explosion consumes the jungle. Miles away, the blast is visible from the sky. Silence, smoke, ash. A helicopter descends. Out of the haze emerges Dutch. Burned, broken, alive. He climbs aboard, the sole survivor of a mission that will forever define him. Analysis: what if I told you that one of the greatest action movies of all time isn't really about guns, it isn't really about muscles, and it isn't even really about soldiers. It's about what happens when the ultimate hunters suddenly realize they are no longer the top predators. In 1987, Predator quietly pulled off something brilliant. It lures you in with the promise of a classic macho action film, big guns, elite commandos, and non-stop explosions, and then slowly transforms into a terrifying survival nightmare. At first, everything feels familiar. A special forces team drops into a jungle war zone. They're confident, they're unstoppable, they've never lost a mission, but deep in that jungle, something is watching them. Something that doesn't play by human rules, something that doesn't fight fair, something that hunts for sport, and that's what makes Predator special. This movie doesn't just show tough men fighting a monster. It strips those men down layer by layer, their weapons, their technology, their teamwork, and eventually their sense of control, until all that's left is raw instinct. Predator is a film about dominance, about ego, about survival, and about the horrifying realization that humanity may not be at the top of the food chain after all. Today, we're diving deep into why Predator still stands as one of the most influential action sci-fi films ever made, how it secretly blends multiple genres into one seamless experience, and why its simple premise created one of cinema's most iconic monsters. So lock in, stay till the end, because once you enter the jungle, you're being hunted. Released in 1987, Predator arrived during the golden age of high-octane action cinema, an era dominated by larger-than-life heroes, explosive set pieces, and simple good versus evil storytelling. At the center of it all is Arnold Schwarzenegger as Major Alan Dutch Schiefer, the leader of an elite special operations unit known for handling missions no one else can survive. The film is directed by John McTiernan, a filmmaker who understood how to balance scale, pacing, and tension, and who would later go on to direct other legendary action classics. The setting couldn't be more hostile. A dense, unforgiving Central American jungle, thick trees, limited visibility, no easy escape. Dutch and his team are sent in on what sounds like a straightforward mission: rescue captured operatives from hostile territory and get out. But almost immediately, it becomes clear that something isn't right. What begins as a military operation slowly transforms into a fight for survival against an unknown force, one that observes from the shadows, moves silently, and attacks with surgical precision. Without giving away spoilers, Predator can best be described as a movie that starts like a war film, evolves into a mystery, and ultimately becomes a survival horror story disguised as an action blockbuster. You're not just watching soldiers on a mission, you're watching confidence collapse, you're watching control disappear, you're watching humans face something they were never meant to encounter, and that's the experience Predator offers: relentless tension, brutal action, and a growing sense of dread that never fully lets go. This isn't just another 80s action movie, it's the calm before a very violent storm. On the surface, Predator looks like a pure action movie: big muscles, big guns, explosions, one-liners, but that's the illusion, because Predator is actually playing a much smarter game. At its core, this film is a fusion of three powerful genres: action, science fiction, and horror. The first act embraces the language of a military action film. The second act shifts into science fiction mystery, and by the final act, it becomes a full-blown survival horror story. That transition is the film's secret weapon. One of the main themes of Predator is the collapse of human superiority. These soldiers enter the jungle believing they are the apex predators. They've conquered battlefields. They've crushed enemy forces. They trust their training. They trust their firepower, and none of it matters. Another major theme is ego versus reality. Every member of the team carries a certain level of bravado, a belief that nothing can touch them. The Predator exists solely to shatter that belief. The movie also explores devolution. As technology fails, as ammunition runs out, as communication breaks down, humans are forced to abandon modern warfare and return to primitive survival instincts: traps, camouflage, stealth, patience. Emotionally, the tone of the film shifts from confident and aggressive to anxious and paranoid to quiet and desperate. By the end, this isn't about winning, it's about enduring. Predator targets action fans first, but its deeper themes pull in sci-fi lovers, horror enthusiasts, and viewers who enjoy psychological tension. It's a movie that looks simple, but underneath the surface, it's about what happens when mankind realizes it is not alone and not in control. The story of Predator begins like a textbook military operation. Major Dutch Schiefer and his elite commando unit are deployed into a dense Central American jungle with one clear objective: locate and rescue captured operatives from hostile territory. From the moment they arrive, this team proves why they're considered the best. They move fast, they communicate flawlessly, they eliminate enemy forces with overwhelming efficiency. This is a group that has never failed. But almost immediately, something feels off. Deep in the jungle, they discover the aftermath of a massacre: bodies stripped of skin, corpses hanging from trees, signs of extreme violence that don't match any known enemy tactic. At first, they assume it's the work of guerrilla forces. They are wrong. Soon after, members of the team begin to die silently. No gunfire, no visible attackers, no warning. One moment a soldier is standing, the next moment he's gone. The jungle itself feels alive, as if something is moving just beyond sight. The team realizes they are being hunted, not by humans, but by something that studies them. Something that observes their patterns, learns their strengths, and exploits their weaknesses. Panic slowly replaces confidence. They fire into trees, they set traps, they spread out. Nothing works. One by one, the strongest soldiers fall. Each death pushes the survivors closer to the truth. Their weapons don't give them control anymore. Eventually, Dutch finds himself alone, wounded, exhausted, cut off from help. With no advanced gear left, Dutch abandons modern combat entirely. He covers himself in mud, builds crude traps, sharpens sticks, uses vines, logs, and fire. The jungle becomes his weapon. The hunter and the hunted switch roles. What follows is not a typical action showdown. It's a primal duel: man versus monster, instinct versus technology, and only one of them is leaving the jungle alive. This is where Predator fully reveals its true identity: not a war movie, not a sci-fi spectacle, but a raw survival story about adaptability and the cost of facing something beyond human understanding. By the time Predator reaches its final moments, the battlefield is no longer a jungle. It's a proving ground. Dutch, battered and barely standing, has managed to do the impossible. He didn't overpower the creature with superior weapons. He didn't outgun it, he outthought it. Using traps, terrain, and patience, Dutch injures the Predator and forces it out of hiding. For the first time in the entire film, the monster is fully visible. No camouflage, no invisibility. No mystery, just a wounded alien warrior. And in that moment, something unexpected happens. The Predator does not rage, it does not beg, it does not flee. Instead, it observes Dutch, almost respectfully. Because the Predator isn't just a killing machine, it's a hunter with a code. Throughout the film, it targets only those who are armed. It seeks worthy opponents, and Dutch has proven himself worthy. When the Predator realizes it cannot win, it activates a self-destruct device. not as an act of fear, but as an act of control. It refuses to be captured. It refuses to be studied. It chooses death on its own terms. The massive explosion wipes the creature from existence. Dutch survives, but this is not a victorious ending. There is no celebration, no triumph, no heroic speech. Dutch is rescued, sitting in silence. His eyes are empty. His face is distant, because survival came at a price. He entered the jungle as a confident leader. He leaves it as a man who has seen something that reshaped his understanding of reality. The ending of Predator isn't about defeating evil. It's about realizing humanity is not alone in the universe, and not at the top of the food chain. Dutch didn't win, he endured, and sometimes that's the only victory that exists. One of the reasons Predator remains so fascinating decades later is because a huge amount of storytelling happens without dialogue. The film speaks through visuals, through framing, through small details most viewers never consciously notice. Let's start with the Predator's vision. Whenever we see the world through the creature's eyes, it appears in thermal imagery. Everything is reduced to heat signatures. This tells us something important. The Predator doesn't see individuals. It sees targets, living energy, prey. In contrast, Dutch's turning point comes when he covers himself in cold mud. Symbolically, this is massive. It represents humanity shedding modern identity. No uniform, no rank, no technology, just flesh and instinct. Man returning to primitive form to survive. Another subtle detail, the Predator never attacks unarmed humans. It watches, it waits, it selects. This hints at an honor-based hunting culture. The creature isn't mindless, it's selective, calculated, and proud. Early in the film, we hear strange clicking sounds long before we ever see the Predator. Those clicks function as subconscious conditioning. Your brain starts associating the sound with death. By the time you realize what it means, it's already too late. There's also clever visual foreshadowing. Branches moving slightly. Leaves falling when no wind is present. Shadows shifting in unnatural ways. The film is constantly telling you something is here, even when you can't see it. The jungle itself carries symbolism. It's not just a location, it's a living maze. A place where modern advantages mean nothing. A place that strips humans down to animal status. Even the Predator's self-destruction has symbolic weight. It mirrors a warrior choosing death over dishonor, a final act of control. A final declaration, you may have beaten me, but you do not own me. Predator hides depth beneath its explosive surface. It looks like a simple monster movie, but beneath the muscles and gunfire, it's a story about hierarchy, about evolution, and about what happens when humans encounter a species that treats us the way we treat animals. And that idea is far more terrifying than any special effect. Behind the brutal intensity of Predator lies a production story almost as fascinating as the film itself. Let's start with the monster. The original Predator design was completely different. Early test footage revealed a creature that looked goofy. So bad, in fact, that the studio scrapped the entire design mid-production. Enter legendary special effects artist Stan Winston. He redesigned the Predator from scratch, adding the iconic mandibles, the dreadlock-like tendrils, the muscular, warrior-like physique. The result, one of the most recognizable movie creatures of all time. Here's another wild fact. Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast to play the Predator, but when the creature design changed into a much larger, heavier suit, Van Damme exited the project. The new design required a physically imposing performer who could move with slow, predatory confidence. Another layer of realism came from the cast itself. Most of the actors underwent intense physical training before filming. Not just to look muscular, but to move like soldiers, weapon handling, tactical movement, squad formations. This is why the team feels authentic from the very first scene. Many of the film's most famous lines weren't heavily polished. Arnold Schwarzenegger's delivery of "Get to the chopper" was raw, aggressive, and immediate. No fancy phrasing, just urgency. Even the jungle location added to the challenge. Filming in dense terrain meant extreme heat, insects, mud, and unpredictable weather. Cast and crew were physically exhausted, which unintentionally helped sell the growing fatigue and desperation on screen. And here's a fun detail. The Predator's clicking sound was created using manipulated animal noises combined with mechanical effects. It wasn't just designed to sound alien, it was designed to make audiences uncomfortable. Every aspect of Predator's creation, from creature design to actor conditioning, was built to serve immersion, not spectacle first, not flashiness, believability. And that commitment is a huge reason why the film still holds up today. Because great monsters aren't just seen, they're felt. To truly understand what makes Predator special, you have to look at the movies it stands beside, and the movies it quietly outclasses. On one level, Predator shares DNA with Ridley Scott's Alien, Both films trap highly trained professionals in an isolated environment. Both feature an unseen creature that stalks from the shadows. But where Alien leans into claustrophobic sci-fi horror, Predator begins as a loud, confident action film. That contrast makes its transformation even more powerful. You can also feel echoes of John Carpenter's The Thing. An invisible enemy, paranoia, a sense that death could come from any direction. The difference: The Thing focuses on mistrust within a group. Predator focuses on helplessness against superiority. Another strong comparison is First Blood. Both films end with a lone warrior using guerrilla tactics, traps, camouflage, environmental warfare. But while First Blood shows a man pushed to his limits by society, Predator shows a man pushed to his limits by something not of this world. Now let's talk about its own franchise. Many sequels expanded the Predator mythology. More aliens, bigger battles, more lore. But most fans agree none captured the purity of the original concept. One creature, one team. One jungle, no distractions, no overcomplication, just a perfect survival premise. Where later entries leaned into spectacle, the original leaned into tension. Where later films explained too much, the original embraced mystery. That's why Predator isn't just remembered as a good entry in its genre. It's remembered as a benchmark, a film that proved you could combine action, sci-fi, and horror and still create something disciplined, focused, timeless. Some movies start trends. Predator became the standard others tried to chase, and very few ever caught it. When Predator first hit theaters in 1987, the reaction wasn't what you might expect today. Many critics at the time viewed it as just another loud 80s action movie. Some dismissed it as shallow. Others focused almost entirely on its muscle-bound cast and violent spectacle. But audiences felt something different. Word of mouth spread fast. People weren't just talking about the explosions, they were talking about the creature. They were talking about the tension. They were talking about how the movie changed halfway through. Over the years, perception began to shift. Viewers started recognizing the film's clever structure. The genre switch, the slow burn suspense hiding beneath the action surface. What was once labeled simple started to look smart. Today, Predator is widely considered a cult classic, not because it was critically crowned at release, but because it earned its reputation through longevity, through rewatches, through influence. Filmmakers have cited it as inspiration. Game designers have borrowed its stalking mechanics. Pop culture constantly references its imagery and lines. So is Predator underrated? In its own era, absolutely. Is it overrated? Not even close. It's a film that aged better than almost anyone predicted, because trends fade, technology evolves, but strong concepts never die, and Predator's concept remains just as effective today as it was nearly 4 decades ago. That's not nostalgia, that's durability. So after all these years, after countless imitators, after an entire franchise, where does Predator truly stand? It stands as one of the cleanest examples of high-concept filmmaking. A simple idea, executed with absolute confidence. The film's greatest strength is its structure. It doesn't rush, it doesn't over-explain, it lets tension build naturally. It allows mystery to exist. The creature design remains iconic. The atmosphere remains thick. The genre blending remains seamless. But Predator isn't perfect. Some characters are lightly sketched, the emotional depth is minimal, and the story itself is straightforward. Yet none of those things break the experience, because Predator knows exactly what it wants to be, and it becomes it flawlessly. This movie is for action fans who love practical effects and real stunts, sci-fi fans who enjoy mysterious, dangerous creatures, horror fans who appreciate slow-burn stalking tension, and anyone who enjoys survival stories where intelligence matters more than strength. If you've never seen Predator, you're missing a foundational genre classic. If you have seen it, it's worth revisiting, because great movies don't age, they reveal. Predator isn't just an 80s action film. It's a timeless survival nightmare disguised as entertainment, and once you enter that jungle, you never forget what hunted you. Reviews: I've had a soft spot for Predator ever since I was a kid. Back then, I saw it as pure entertainment, fast, exciting, and endlessly cool. Revisiting it years later only strengthened that feeling. What once felt like a fun action movie has now firmly secured a place among my personal favorites. While I still consider Die Hard to be John McTiernan's crowning achievement, Predator easily stands beside his best work. The film delivers exactly what it promises, and then goes a step further. The action is relentless yet carefully paced, keeping the energy high without overwhelming the audience. Suspense is layered throughout, and the practical effects remain impressive even decades later. Instead of feeling outdated, they enhance the experience and help ground the story. The characters are memorable, the narrative pulls you in, Alan Silvestri's iconic score heightens every tense moment, and McTiernan's confident direction keeps everything tight and purposeful. The dialogue is packed with lines that stick in your head, and Arnold Schwarzenegger gives one of his most charismatic and commanding performances. The movie might run slightly long, but it's a thrilling ride from start to finish and a true product of its era. The story kicks off with something mysterious arriving on Earth, while elsewhere a special operations unit is deployed to rescue a high-ranking official after a helicopter crash in hostile jungle territory. CIA agent Dylan persuades his old friend Dutch to lead the mission, even though Dutch prefers operating without outside interference. Almost immediately, Dutch senses that Dylan isn't being completely honest about the objective. Their suspicions are confirmed when they stumble upon brutally slaughtered soldiers hanging in the trees. After raiding a guerrilla camp and capturing a survivor named Anna, it becomes clear that human enemies are the least of their worries. At its core, this is classic 1980s action cinema. It embraces its larger-than-life attitude, packed with memorable one-liners and muscular bravado, and it's not just Schwarzenegger who gets the spotlight. Jesse Ventura's famous "I ain't got time to bleed" is just one of many quotable moments. More importantly, the film launches a franchise with a surprisingly clever concept. The creature isn't simply a monster, it's a hunter. The title says it all. This being isn't here to wage war, it's here for sport. If destruction were the goal, the jungle would already be ashes. Instead, it stalks, studies, and collects trophies like a twisted safari enthusiast. The plot itself is intentionally straightforward, and that simplicity works in the film's favor. The focus stays on survival, tension, and action rather than complicated storytelling. If you're searching for a genuinely intense action film that also manages to be frightening, this is an excellent place to look. Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers anchor the movie with strong chemistry, and even viewers who aren't normally fans of Arnold may find themselves impressed by his screen presence here. What makes the threat especially effective is its invisibility for much of the runtime. You often sense danger long before you see it, which builds a constant feeling of unease. When the creature finally reveals itself, it stands among the most striking sci-fi monsters of its time, easily comparable to the xenomorph from Alien. Watching these heavily armed, battle-hardened soldiers slowly unravel as they realize they're being hunted is one of the film's greatest strengths. Fear and adrenaline collide, pushing them to fight back even when survival seems impossible. The script is better than expected for this type of movie, blending humor, camaraderie, and shocking turns. The team members genuinely feel like brothers in arms, willing to risk everything for one another. When deaths occur, they aren't brushed aside, they land with impact, often catching the viewer off guard. The combination of harsh jungle conditions and an otherworldly predator creates a relentless sense of danger that would have been even more overwhelming on the big screen. McTiernan excels at turning the jungle into a suffocating maze, perfect for a deadly game of hide-and-seek. One by one, the team is hunted down, and the tension steadily escalates. In a clever twist, the film flips the usual action formula. Instead of one hero taking on an army, it's one unstoppable enemy facing a group of elite fighters. The result is sweaty, gritty, testosterone-fueled action that epitomizes 1980s blockbuster cinema. Predator remains a classic because it understands its strengths and never overcomplicates things. It's loud, intense, suspenseful, and endlessly entertaining. While it's clearly aimed more at fans of macho action spectacles, its craftsmanship and iconic monster have allowed it to endure far beyond its decade. It's a film I'll gladly return to again and again. The ensemble cast fits this film perfectly because it isn't asking for Shakespearean performances, it's asking for raw physical presence, swagger, and attitude. Carl Weathers delivers strong support in a grounded role, while Bill Duke stands out as the soldier whose confidence slowly crumbles under pressure. Jesse Ventura injects humor into the relentless tension, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is absolutely in his element. He doesn't need complex dialogue, he needs to look intimidating, fire heavy weapons, absorb punishment, and toss out unforgettable one-liners. Schwarzenegger sells the idea that this man might be the only human capable of going toe-to-toe with something not from this world. Action fans will find plenty to enjoy, including massive firefights and explosive sequences that feel reminiscent of the era's biggest shoot-'em-ups. Yet beneath the gunfire, Predator is less of a straight action spectacle and more of a slow-burn suspense thriller that gradually shifts into survival horror. The tension builds through eerie silence, unseen movement, and sudden brutal attacks. When the violence hits, it doesn't pull punches. Limbs are severed, bodies are mutilated, and corpses hang grotesquely from the trees. For a mainstream release, the level of brutality is surprisingly high and highly effective. While the human characters are memorable, the true star is the Predator itself. This becomes even more evident when the creature later carried an entire sequel on its own. The legendary Stan Winston's effects work is outstanding. The cloaking effect, which renders the alien nearly invisible for much of the film, still looks impressive decades later. And when the creature finally reveals its true face, complete with its iconic mandibles, it's an instantly recognizable monster design that cemented its place in pop culture history. The movie is packed with genre staples. Jungle booby traps, extended firefights, over-the-top weaponry, and relentless stalking sequences. One standout moment sees the commandos unload everything they have into the jungle, shredding an entire section of forest in blind fury. It's excessive, loud, and wonderfully ridiculous in the best possible way. All of this combines to make Predator a rare hybrid, equal parts science fiction, horror, and action, that still holds up as a genre benchmark. The story follows Dutch, a hardened special forces leader, who is sent with his elite unit on what appears to be a routine rescue mission deep in hostile territory. Very quickly, the mission turns strange. Something is watching them. Something is hunting them. One by one, the team begins to disappear, and the realization dawns that they're facing an enemy that doesn't play by human rules. Upon release, Predator became a major success and launched a franchise that includes sequels, crossovers, and reimaginings. But none have truly surpassed the original. The 1980s produced countless action classics, and Predator remains among the most beloved of them. What truly elevates the film is its final act, where the focus narrows to a tense duel between Dutch and the alien hunter. The movie patiently builds toward this confrontation, allowing both sides to prepare, adapt, and test each other. The result is a gripping showdown that feels earned rather than rushed. Stan Winston's creature effects remain the film's crown jewel, but they're supported by a charismatic cast that embraces the film's unapologetically macho tone. Schwarzenegger leads the charge, backed by strong performances from Weathers, Ventura, Duke, and Shane Black. The result is a rough-edged, bloody, and endlessly entertaining ride that knows exactly what it wants to be. Predator isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be. It's a muscular, suspenseful, creature-driven action film that delivers thrills, tension, and iconic moments in abundance. Decades later, it still stands as one of the finest examples of how to blend action and horror into a single, unforgettable experience. There's more going on behind this mission than the team initially realizes. The CIA isn't being entirely honest about why these soldiers are sent into the jungle. After their first violent clash with the rebels, things quickly spiral out of control as the squad starts falling one by one. Something unseen is stalking them, something intelligent, lethal, and possibly not of this world. Coming off the box office wins of Commando and The Running Man, Arnold Schwarzenegger's action vehicles received bigger budgets and more ambitious production values, and Predator clearly benefits from that upgrade. The cast is broader and more interesting than usual, featuring a lineup of rugged personalities, and even an early acting appearance by future screenwriting powerhouse Shane Black. At its core, this is a crowd-pleasing action movie filled with gunfire, camaraderie, dark humor, and escalating tension. As the film progresses, the focus shifts from squad-based warfare to a primal duel between Dutch and the mysterious hunter. In a strangely prophetic touch, we even see early hints of Schwarzenegger exploring softer emotional moments alongside a Latina character, something that would become more common in his later career. That said, the movie isn't flawless. It follows a fairly familiar action formula, and aside from Carl Weathers Dillon, most members of the squad exist more as archetypes than fully developed characters. Still, this film seemed to mark a turning point for Arnold. He began to understand that dominating the action genre required more than sheer physique. It demanded stronger scripts, impressive effects, and imaginative directors. His next major project, Total Recall, would push those ideas even further. A fun bit of trivia: the movie features two performers who would later become real-life governors. And speaking of curiosities, the Predator creature itself went through major behind-the-scenes changes. Early versions simply didn't work, and production reportedly paused while the design was rethought. The final result, however, became iconic. Even the switch in performer, from the original concept to Kevin Peter Hall, proved to be a crucial improvement. And no, Jean-Claude Van Damme didn't suffer from the change. His career turned out just fine. The concept itself is wonderfully strange, an extraterrestrial warrior traveling across the stars purely for the thrill of the hunt. It's ambitious, maybe even overly so, and not every element has aged gracefully. But the practical effects still hold up better than expected, the performances are solid, and the atmosphere is incredibly tense. The filmmakers aimed to cast people who looked authentic as soldiers, but could also act, resulting in some unconventional yet memorable choices. Shane Black's presence is especially interesting, as many of the film's witty one-liners feel very much in his style, even if his behind-the-scenes writing contributions were never officially credited. Lines like "I ain't got time to bleed" or "stick around" have a sharp, darkly comedic edge. Even the simple knock-knock moment, lacking a traditional punchline, lands as an effective piece of gallows humor. The violence is intense and unapologetic, and one of the most famous quotes, "If it bleeds, we can kill it," arrives almost casually, despite becoming legendary. And of course, "Get to the chopper" echoes throughout the film, delivered in Arnold's unmistakably thick accent, which only adds to its charm. Genre-wise, Predator blends war, action, horror, and science fiction into a surprisingly cohesive mix. Another amusingly ironic line appears when Dutch insists, "My men are not expendable." In hindsight, that statement carries a certain dark humor, especially considering Arnold's later film franchises. Ultimately, this is a rough-edged but immensely entertaining movie. It may not be perfect, but its flaws somehow make it more endearing. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and succeeds more often than not. Set to the blaring sounds of Little Richard's Long Tall Sally, helicopters deliver Dutch Schwarzenegger, Pancho Richard Chavs, Billy Sonny Landham, Mac Bill Duke, Hawkins Shane Black, Blaine Jesse Ventura, and Dylan Carl Weathers into the jungles of Central America on a mission to rescue a kidnapped government official. Along the way, they stumble upon the remains of a previous rescue team, stripped of skin and hanging from the trees. After wiping out the enemy forces, including Soviet operatives, Dutch learns the bitter truth. Dylan manipulated the entire mission to gather intelligence. The sole survivor is Anna Elpidia Carrillo, who is taken along to the extraction point. That's when the film changes gears. Written by Jim and John Thomas, and directed by John McTiernan, Predator begins as a hyper-masculine celebration of firepower before morphing into a deadly game of survival. An invisible alien hunter, portrayed by Kevin Peter Hall, has come to Earth for sport, and these elite soldiers are its chosen prey. The story itself originated from a tongue-in-cheek joke. After Rocky IV, Stallone had supposedly run out of human opponents, so next he'd have to fight an alien. That idea sparked the Thomas brothers to write a script titled Hunter, which eventually evolved into Predator. And honestly, it remains one of the most inventive action concepts of its era, and still a great time at the movies. You could easily make the case that filmmakers had already explored similar territory with Without Warning, a movie that also featured an alien armed with advanced weaponry stalking humans on Earth, interestingly played by Kevin Peter Hall as well. Over the years, countless stories have circulated about Jean-Claude Van Damme once being attached to play the Predator. Why that version never happened is still debated. Some say it was because Van Damme stood at only 5'9". Others claim he struggled with the intense heat inside the suit and frequently passed out, while another theory suggests that the original creature concept simply wasn't working. Everything changed once Stan Winston stepped in with a complete redesign. The result became legendary. The Predator's final appearance stands shoulder to shoulder with cinema's greatest creature creations, including the xenomorph from Alien, a franchise the Predator would later cross paths with. From that point forward, everything clicked. Predator just works. While I also have a soft spot for Predator 2, the original film remains untouchable. The idea alone is perfection, the ultimate hunter versus the ultimate soldier. That is action movie storytelling at its finest. Being a 12-year-old in 1987 who loved action films meant there was no escaping Predator, especially with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the peak of his superstardom. Today, it's hard to imagine anyone not knowing about the Predator franchise. And if someone truly isn't familiar with it, honestly, where have they been for the past few decades? The Alien and Predator universes, across movies, games, comics, and other media, form one of the most enjoyable sci-fi action worlds ever created. The story is deceptively simple. A squad of elite commandos is sent into the Central American jungle to locate and rescue survivors from a crashed helicopter. But the oppressive heat and hostile terrain are only part of the danger. Something far worse is out there, an extraterrestrial hunter that stalks the team for sport. The cast is exceptionally strong for an action sci-fi film. Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers anchor the movie with commanding performances, supported by a memorable ensemble of tough, believable soldiers. And of course, Kevin Peter Hall's physical performance as the Predator gives the creature a powerful, intimidating presence. Atmosphere is one of the film's greatest strengths. The jungle feels alive, suffocating, and dangerous. You feel like you're standing among the team, constantly scanning the trees, waiting for something to move. That sense of tension never really lets up. As a product of the late 1980s, the film is packed with classic one-liners, the most famous being Schwarzenegger's immortal "Get to the chopper." Yet unlike many action films of the era, the humor never overwhelms the suspense. The special effects still deserve praise. Practical creature effects and optical tricks were essential for a movie like this, and the effects team delivered something truly special. The Predator's design remains timeless, terrifying, fascinating, and instantly recognizable. Predator is the kind of movie you can revisit endlessly. If you somehow haven't experienced it yet, now is the time to fix that. It stands among the greatest action films ever made, alongside another masterpiece by the same director released the following year, Die Hard. What makes this film remarkable is how every element comes together: direction, screenplay, casting, performances, pacing, all working in perfect harmony. Even viewers who don't usually gravitate toward action movies can find themselves completely drawn in. I still remember showing this movie to my grandmother, who grew up on silent cinema and classic horror icons like Lon Chaney Sr. Surprisingly, she loved it, despite it being one of the first action films she had ever watched. That says a lot about its universal appeal. Yes, the opening 20 minutes are fairly standard setup, but once the hunt truly begins, the focus shifts away from any single star and onto the filmmaking itself. The camera work, the staging, the escalating tension, and the relationships between the characters become the real driving force. One of the most iconic moments occurs when Dutch covers himself in mud and unknowingly masks his body heat, becoming invisible to the predator's vision. In that instant, the hunter becomes the hunted. It's a brilliant visual metaphor and easily one of the film's standout sequences. It's unfortunate that director John McTiernan's career later faded because his talent was undeniable. For fans of cinema, that loss still stings. The basic mission is clear: rescue captured U.S. personnel from hostile forces in the jungle. But after the firefight, something far worse begins eliminating the team one by one. As his squad dwindles, Dutch realizes there's no escape, only confrontation. This ranks among Schwarzenegger's very best performances, largely because he plays it straight. He isn't relying solely on jokes or exaggerated bravado. He feels human, determined, and vulnerable in a way that strengthens the story. In the end, Predator remains a masterclass in action sci-fi filmmaking: lean, tense, inventive, and endlessly entertaining. The narrative itself is fairly uncomplicated. After the opening rescue mission fades into the background, the film quickly transforms into a brutal game of survival where the hunters become the hunted. One of the movie's greatest strengths is how long it keeps its monster hidden. By delaying the full reveal of the predator, the audience shares the same confusion and dread as the commandos, never quite sure what unseen force is stalking them through the jungle. This restraint generates a powerful sense of suspense that could have easily turned the film into a basic body count slasher, with characters falling one after another in predictable fashion. Thankfully, director John McTiernan avoids that trap, crafting something far more dynamic and layered. The action remains consistently engaging from start to finish. While the cast may not be stacked with award-winning performers, every actor feels perfectly suited to their role. Arnold Schwarzenegger, in particular, delivers a surprisingly restrained performance. Rather than leaning heavily on his larger-than-life persona, he allows the character to carry the weight of the story. Supporting players such as Carl Weathers and former wrestler Jesse Ventura bring strong physical presence, while Bill Duke and the rest of the ensemble round out a rugged and believable squad. At its core, this is a B-movie monster concept, elevated by confident filmmaking and stylish execution. Over time, it has rightly earned recognition as a cornerstone of the action science fiction genre. It also stands as the finest entry in the Predator franchise. The film follows a CIA-backed team of mercenaries sent deep into the Central American jungle, only to discover they are being methodically hunted by a lethal extraterrestrial entity. One by one, the soldiers are eliminated, leading to an intense final confrontation between man and alien. The storyline is straightforward. A highly trained unit must face an almost invisible creature towering over 8 feet tall and armed with advanced weaponry. While certain story elements may stretch logic, the climactic showdown is gripping and packed with tension. The end result is a fiercely violent yet undeniably thrilling experience, driven by a solid cast anchored by Schwarzenegger and supported by familiar genre faces like Sonny Landham, R.G. Armstrong, and Elpidia Carrillo, who became the first prominent brunette actress in the Predator series. Visually, the film is striking. Donald McAlpin's cinematography captures the dense jungle environment with atmosphere and menace, while Alan Silvestri's synthesizer-heavy score has since become iconic. McTiernan's direction is confident and precise, reinforcing why he is remembered for delivering some of the most influential action films of the era, including Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, and The 13th Warrior. The success of Predator spawned numerous sequels, crossovers, and reboots. Predator 2, 1990, Predators 2010, Alien vs. Predator 2004, Aliens vs. Predator, Requiem 2007, and The Predator 2018. While these later entries vary in quality, none quite match the impact of the original. A fun bit of trivia is that both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura later became real-life governors, making this film an amusing early pairing of two future politicians. Ventura's early exit from the story is slightly disappointing, as his character feels primed for a longer survival run. One of the most memorable sequences remains the squad unleashing an absurd amount of firepower into the jungle, annihilating trees in every direction, especially Ventura mowing down vegetation with the iconic minigun, Old Painless. Like Aliens, Predator launched a massive merchandising wave, including toys, comics, and spin-offs, eventually culminating in crossover films. The creature itself was a brilliant creation, a warrior species that hunts for sport and can cloak itself almost perfectly within its surroundings. The design is both grotesque and fascinating, cementing the Predator as one of cinema's most recognizable movie monsters. Ultimately, once the setup is complete, the film becomes a showcase for Schwarzenegger's rugged screen presence. More than 3 decades later, Predator remains a lean, mean, and highly rewatchable action classic. With bulging muscles and a permanent scowl etched across his face, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Dutch relies not only on brute strength, but also sharp instincts to confront an overwhelming enemy in a raw, primal showdown. One of the most striking elements of the final confrontation is the Predator's code of honor, discarding its advanced weaponry to battle Dutch face-to-face. Of course, Dutch manages to even the odds with a cleverly placed falling log trap. And in a grim mirror of Blaine's famous words, the Predator ultimately activates its self-destruct device, proving it truly doesn't have time to bleed. Following the massive success of The Terminator, Schwarzenegger returned to science fiction in this tense jungle-set thriller directed by John McTiernan, who would later redefine action cinema with Die Hard. The story centers on an elite squad of commandos sent into the Central American wilderness to rescue captured personnel from hostile forces. The team completes the initial mission, wiping out the rebel camp and freeing a prisoner named Anna, but their extraction quickly turns into a nightmare. Something unseen stalks them through the jungle, an alien hunter that can cloak itself and collects grisly trophies from its victims. One by one, the hardened soldiers fall. By the time Anna escapes toward the helicopter, Dutch is left alone, wounded but unbroken. Realizing the creature tracks body heat, he coats himself in mud and constructs a series of primitive traps, using survival skills rather than firepower to fight back. The supporting cast is stacked with memorable performances, including Carl Weathers as the secretive Dylan, Bill Duke as the grieving Mac, Jesse Ventura as the swaggering Blaine, Sonny Landham as the stoic Billy, Richard Chavs as Poncho Argy, Armstrong as General Phillips, Shane Black as Hawkins, and Kevin Peter Hall as the imposing Predator. Each actor brings personality and presence, making the team feel authentic and larger than life. Several moments stand out. The explosive assault on the rebel compound, the eerie thermal vision perspective from the Predator's point of view, and the unforgettable reveal of the alien's monstrous face. Schwarzenegger's defiant one-liners only add to the film's iconic status. It's no surprise that a sequel followed a few years later, cementing Predator as a lasting franchise entry in pop culture. This film is pure 1980s action cinema, loud, muscular, and unapologetically violent. Fans of Commando and The Terminator will feel right at home. The body count is massive, beginning with the destruction of a guerrilla base and escalating into a deadly game of survival against an extraterrestrial hunter. The movie opens mysteriously with a spacecraft releasing a smaller vessel toward Earth, offering no immediate explanation. Soon after, Dutch and his crew are briefed on a rescue mission in a politically unstable region. Along for the ride is CIA agent Dylan, whose vague explanations hint that not everything is as it seems. The discovery of flayed corpses from a previous mission confirms that something far worse than human enemies is lurking nearby. Anna tries to warn the team, claiming that the jungle itself is alive. While they initially dismiss her fears, it becomes clear she sensed something unnatural. From this point on, the film shifts into full survival horror mode as the Predator methodically hunts the squad. The action is relentless and often brutal, featuring shootouts, explosions, knife fights, and savage kills. Even the early combat scenes against human foes showcase intense violence, setting the tone for what's to come. Schwarzenegger delivers a strong central performance as Dutch, but Bill Duke's portrayal of Mac stands out emotionally, especially as grief turns into rage. Considering the era, the practical effects are highly impressive. The Predator's cloaking ability and alien design still hold up remarkably well for a pre-CGI production. Released in 1987, Predator blends science fiction, action, and horror into a uniquely powerful experience. It launched a franchise that has endured for decades, and revisiting the original now highlights just how influential it remains. Watching it again, it's easy to see why it's regarded as a classic. Positives. Among the countless action films out there, Predator ranks as one of the most unapologetically macho entries ever made. The movie frequently pauses to let audiences soak in the sheer physicality of its cast, and it embraces that excess with confidence. The ensemble chemistry is fantastic, and it's clear everyone involved is having a blast bringing these characters to life. Their banter, camaraderie, and escalating tension make the experience incredibly engaging. In short, Predator 1987 is a high-octane blend of sci-fi, horror, and action that delivers thrills from start to finish, and remains one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most iconic films. The action set pieces are exactly what you'd hope for from a film under John McTiernan's direction. The screen is constantly alive with gunfire, detonations, and raw chaos, pure adrenaline for anyone who loves classic action cinema. The movie is also packed with endlessly quotable dialogue, lines that have echoed through pop culture for decades. Moments like these give the film an identity that still feels alive today. At the center of it all is the Predator itself, brought to physical life by Kevin Peter Hall, vocally enhanced by Peter Cullen, and visually realized through the legendary practical effects work of Stan Winston. The creature is nothing short of iconic. It's intimidating, cunning, and visually striking in a way few movie monsters have ever managed. Its advanced weaponry and stealth technology make it feel nearly unstoppable, turning every encounter into a terrifying game of survival. Alan Silvestri's musical score deserves special praise. The soundtrack doesn't just accompany the film, it elevates it. Whether the scene calls for thunderous intensity or creeping dread, the music consistently locks you into the emotional rhythm of the story. And then there's the final showdown. The one-on-one clash between Dutch and the Predator stands among the greatest cinematic duels in action history. Stripped of excess and focused purely on hunter versus hunted, it's raw, tense, and unforgettable. Honestly, Predator 1987 has been praised so extensively over the years that it's hard to find new superlatives. It's simply a classic. If you've somehow missed it, correcting that mistake should be high on your priority list. On the surface, Predator embraces many of the hallmarks of 1980s action excess: bulging muscles, bravado, and relentless firepower. But beneath that tough exterior lies a slow-burning science fiction horror film about elite soldiers who become prey to an extraterrestrial trophy hunter in the jungles of South America. The team is led by Dutch, portrayed by an enormously charismatic Arnold Schwarzenegger. His larger-than-life presence anchors the film, and his eventual confrontation with the alien menace serves as the movie's defining moment. The film's hypermasculinity is both part of its appeal and a source of curiosity. The camera frequently lingers on sweat-drenched physiques and exaggerated toughness, creating an atmosphere that can feel unintentionally sensual at times. There's even a relationship between two characters that hints at a deeper emotional bond, whether deliberate or accidental. It's not a criticism. If anything, action cinema could use more openness in this regard. Another interesting undercurrent is the film's skeptical view of government operations. Early on, the soldiers are sent into danger based on questionable intelligence, treated as disposable assets by unseen authorities. While this idea fades into the background once the Predator becomes the primary threat, it still lingers as a subtle condemnation of reckless interventionism. That said, Predator isn't trying to be a political treatise. Its true strength lies in visceral entertainment. The movie constantly oscillates between nerve-wracking silence and explosive mayhem. It begins methodically, erupts into a massive first-act firefight, then gradually dials things back, replacing spectacle with paranoia and creeping fear. As the story progresses, the jungle becomes a hostile maze where every shadow feels alive. By the time the third act arrives, the film abandons large-scale combat entirely, narrowing its focus to a primal duel of wits and endurance. This quieter, more stripped-down approach is what ultimately makes the climax so effective. Predator is a masterful fusion of practical effects, strong direction, and old-school craftsmanship. It blends suspense and spectacle in a way few blockbusters manage, delivering both pulse-pounding action and genuine tension. Decades later, it remains one of the finest examples of how to combine science fiction, horror, and action into a single, unforgettable experience. The film's opening stretch moves at a more leisurely pace than I would prefer, and at times the tonal balance feels slightly off. The The sequence involving the attack on the gorilla compound, let's be honest, it's closer to a full-on slaughter, comes across as somewhat fragmented, making it difficult to connect with on any deeper level beyond admiring the spectacle of exploding buildings and flying debris. There are also stretches where the movie simply isn't as compelling as it could have been. That said, despite these shortcomings, the experience remains consistently enjoyable. There are moments where the tension genuinely grabs hold, and when the film is having fun, it's incredibly entertaining. It also improves steadily as it marches toward its final confrontation, ultimately leaving a strong impression. Overall, I'd land somewhere around a 7 out of 10. Looking back at my original thoughts from years ago, I still find Predator funny in ways it probably never intended, and that's a big part of its charm. I wouldn't go so far as to say I love it, but I definitely have a fondness for it. The movie is packed with ridiculously cheesy one-liners that have become endlessly quotable, and I laughed far more than the filmmakers likely expected. In truth, I'd argue that it's not a good film in the traditional sense, yet it works precisely because of that. Arnold Schwarzenegger delivers exactly what you'd expect from him at this point in his career. His performance relies far more on physical presence and action than dialogue, and that approach suits the material perfectly. After all, this is a film designed around action set pieces, and on that front, it largely delivers. Director John McTiernan keeps things moving at a brisk clip and manages to present the Predator as a threatening, mysterious force rather than just a gimmick. The creature effects are strong enough that I never found myself thinking, that's just a guy in a costume, which is no small achievement. This is not a cinematic masterpiece, but its reputation as a cult favorite makes complete sense, especially alongside many of Schwarzenegger's other 1980s outings. It didn't blow me away, and it didn't bore me either. It sits comfortably in the middle, imperfect, occasionally clumsy, but undeniably entertaining and good for a few laughs. Revisiting Predator recently, I was curious to see how well it holds up after all this time. The storyline remains refreshingly straightforward. Schwarzenegger plays Dutch, the leader of an elite squad sent into the Central American jungle on what appears to be a rescue mission. A CIA operative tags along, and before long, the team realizes they're being stalked by something unseen and very deadly. One of the movie's biggest strengths is its efficiency. The setup is handled quickly, without excessive exposition, and once the hunt begins, the film wastes little time. Squad members are eliminated one by one in increasingly brutal ways, leading to a climactic duel that's as much about strategy as it is about strength. If there's a section that overstays its welcome, it's the raid on the enemy camp. The sequence drags on to such an extent that it almost becomes unintentionally humorous. A few aspects also haven't aged gracefully. While the creature design still holds up impressively, some early visual effects shots look dated. Certain lines of dialogue, too, feel uncomfortable by modern standards. Objectively speaking, the acting, dialogue, and character depth leave a lot to be desired, but that hardly matters here. Predator thrives as a loud, over-the-top action spectacle, and that's exactly what it set out to be. Although officially labeled as a sci-fi action horror film, I've always thought of Predator as a pure testosterone-fueled action throwback. The opening credits, paired with Alan Silvestri's pounding score, immediately established the larger-than-life tone. From there, the movie blends simple storytelling with heavy firepower, stylized violence, and striking creature design. There's an interesting contradiction at the heart of the film. On one hand, the heroes are portrayed as reluctant participants in a morally questionable mission. On the other, the movie clearly revels in showcasing heavily armed super soldiers mowing down enemies in exaggerated fashion. That tension between self-awareness and indulgence defines Predator, and ultimately, it's a big reason why the film remains memorable decades later. As the mysterious hunter begins to take center stage, the film subtly shifts in both direction and mood. I first experienced this movie back in the late 80s, and I still remember how unsettling it felt, especially because so much of the threat remained unseen for a long time. Much like what Jaws accomplished years earlier, the filmmakers wisely hold back full reveals, letting imagination do much of the work. When the creature finally steps into the light, it is appropriately terrifying, particularly through the eyes of a young viewer. The story steadily builds toward a thrilling final act filled with striking visual moments. What stands out most is the thick atmosphere, the legendary creature design, and the constant tension. Even though the film contains plenty of violence, many of its most effective scenes revolve around problem-solving and tactical thinking rather than brute force alone. The chemistry between the team members adds a great deal of personality. The non-stop tough guy banter is often funny, endlessly quotable, and very much a product of its era. Each performer brings something unique to their role. Carl Weathers leaves a strong impression, but the entire cast is entertaining. Arnold Schwarzenegger delivers a restrained and effective performance as Dutch, playing him as capable, commanding, and surprisingly human. The director uses Arnold wisely, allowing physical presence and body language to carry more weight than lengthy dialogue. The plot initially seems straightforward. Major Allen, Dutch Schieffer, leads his elite unit into a Central American jungle to rescue captured personnel. The mission appears successful, even though they stumble across unsettling signs along the way, but it quickly becomes clear that something far worse is hunting them. One by one, the squad is stalked by a technologically advanced extraterrestrial warrior that turns trained soldiers into prey. Now reduced in number, the survivors, along with one civilian woman, must figure out how to outthink an enemy that is stronger, faster, and nearly invisible. Survival alone is not enough. They must learn how to fight back. No one will mistake this film for an award-season drama, but for action fans, it is pure adrenaline. It radiates a level of raw, muscular energy that feels rare in modern cinema. It's the kind of movie that proudly embraces its identity as a testosterone-fueled spectacle, and it serves as another reminder of how dominant the action genre was during the 1980s. Watching Schwarzenegger and Weathers unleash chaos is endlessly satisfying. The practical effects still impress, and the creature makeup remains iconic. The gore is mostly convincing, and the overall craftsmanship holds up remarkably well. Final verdict: The home media releases are packed with bonus material, including director commentary, documentaries, featurettes, deleted scenes, outtakes, special effects tests, photo galleries, and multiple hidden Easter eggs. Fans willing to explore the menus will uncover behind-the-scenes stories, cast interviews, and fun production anecdotes. Over the years, I've watched this movie on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and eventually in 3D. When early previews of the 3D version impressed critics, longtime fans were eager to experience it again in a new format. However, because the film was never shot in native 3D, the studio relied on conversion rather than a painstaking restoration process like what some classic films received. The results are mixed. Certain scenes benefit from added depth, while others look fairly flat. The opening sequence in space stands out as the strongest showcase, with stars creating a genuine sense of dimensionality. Unfortunately, consistency is where the conversion struggles. Some moments feel immersive, while others remind you that this was an after-the-fact enhancement rather than a ground-up 3D production. Still, regardless of format, the core experience remains powerful. Predator endures because of its tension, atmosphere, memorable characters, and one of the most iconic movie monsters ever created. The studio opted for a style of depth-based 3D rather than effects flying directly toward the audience. Even so, I still found myself enjoying the experience, because at its core, this is one incredible movie. Yes, a few visual effects show their age, but the tension remains strong, and the brutality hasn't lost its bite. I'm perfectly satisfied with owning the 3D Blu-ray, though I can understand why hardcore fans expecting an immersive, cutting-edge conversion might feel underwhelmed. It's pretty clear that the conversion was done quickly, likely to capitalize on profit rather than artistry. Thankfully, the package also includes the standard 2D version, which is essentially the classic release with familiar bonus features and nothing particularly new. So it really comes down to personal preference. If you enjoy collecting 3D editions, this one is serviceable. There are certainly worse conversions out there, but for die-hard Predator fans, sticking with the traditional version might be the better choice. As for the film itself, I'd comfortably rate it an 8 out of 10. This movie will always hold a special place in my heart. Not only is it one of the standout sci-fi/horror hybrids of the 1980s, but it's also a defining film from my childhood. I watched it countless times growing up, and revisiting it as an adult instantly reminded me why it left such a strong impression. Predator functions simultaneously as a testosterone-fueled action spectacle, a grisly horror outing, and a fascinating piece of science fiction. Despite its relatively lean runtime of around 100 minutes, it somehow balances all three genres with impressive confidence. Casting Arnold Schwarzenegger practically guarantees the film's lasting popularity. He's never been known for subtle performances, but what he lacks in range, he makes up for in sheer screen presence. His charisma, physicality, and larger-than-life persona perfectly suit this kind of material. The story itself is wonderfully straightforward. A team of elite commandos is dispatched into the jungle on a covert operation. Before long, they realize they're not the only armed force lurking among the trees. Discovering the mutilated remains of a previous squad is only the beginning of their nightmare. Setting the film in a dense jungle was a smart choice. While many sci-fi action movies gravitate toward outer space, keeping the action grounded on Earth gives Predator a distinctive identity. Director John McTiernan uses thick foliage and limited visibility to amplify the suspense, creating a constant sense of unease. Much like soldiers in a war zone, the characters are fighting something they cannot fully see or understand. The atmosphere is thick with dread, and the effects, while dated in places, still contribute to a convincing futuristic edge. Although Predator arrived not long after the success of James Cameron's Aliens, it never feels like a cheap imitation. It stands confidently on its own thanks to sharp direction, relentless pacing, and expertly staged action sequences. Gunfire, explosions, and heavy weaponry are everywhere, ensuring action fans get exactly what they came for. Having a hulking action star at the center certainly doesn't hurt either. Schwarzenegger isn't alone in bringing muscle to the screen. The supporting cast is packed with imposing figures, including Jesse Ventura and Carl Weathers, giving the team a believable, intimidating presence. Together, they form a group that feels capable until they start dropping one by one. Then there's the creature itself. The Predator may not possess the sleek elegance of the alien xenomorph, but its design and concept are just as inspired. This isn't an alien trying to colonize or communicate. It's a hunter, stalking humans purely for sport. That idea alone is deeply unsettling. The violence is graphic, but rarely feels excessive, serving the story rather than overwhelming it. Predator never quite received the critical respect it deserved, but its reputation among fans has only grown stronger over time. It's unapologetically simple, shamelessly loud, and endlessly entertaining. In short, it's dumb fun done extremely well. Camouflaged soldiers in the jungle, check. A captured civilian in danger, check. A relentless killer stalking from the shadows, check. And yet, despite those surface-level ingredients, this isn't that kind of Predator movie at all. Still, it's hard to deny that this stands as one of the ultimate guys movies, a raw, sweaty, explosive thrill ride that knows exactly what it is and fully embraces it. On the surface, this film feels like a checklist of hypermasculine action tropes. Loud explosions, heavy gunfire, massive physiques, knife fights, an endangered woman, extraterrestrial menace, and Arnold Schwarzenegger right at the center of it all. It's no surprise that many people consider it a classic, though I'd argue it's more of a guy's classic than a universally timeless one. The reason I hesitate to label it a true classic is simple: the story is incredibly thin. That said, the core idea is undeniably cool. A mysterious alien hunter that stalks elite warriors, slowly shifting the dynamic from hunter to hunted and eventually turning prey into survivor. The visual effects were impressive for their time, and the concept of placing larger-than-life soldiers in a hostile jungle environment, facing not just human enemies, but also an unknown extraterrestrial force, works surprisingly well. However, if someone is searching for an Arnold-led action film with more narrative depth and originality, there are stronger options. The Terminator, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Total Recall, and True Lies immediately come to mind. As for the plot itself, it's extremely straightforward. A highly trained military unit is sent into a dense jungle on what appears to be a rescue mission. Almost immediately, they realize something is horribly wrong when they stumble upon skinned corpses hanging from trees. The movie initially points fingers at local guerrillas, providing an excuse for an explosive firefight and some trademark Schwarzenegger one-liners that feel more playful than organic. Of course, the audience already knows better. That strange spacecraft shown in the opening scene wasn't included by accident, but before the film embraces its sci-fi side, we're treated to internal conflicts, a hostage situation, and the slow elimination of team members one by one. Once the story narrows its focus to a single man versus the creature, the film noticeably improves. Schwarzenegger tones down the cheesy dialogue and relies more on strategy and survival instincts. Watching him shift from brute force to tactical thinking is one of the film's highlights, even if the extended trap building sequence drags a bit. Still, it's hard to imagine a more fitting opponent for the Predator than Schwarzenegger in his prime. The musical score, composed by Alan Silvestri, is instantly recognizable. If you've heard his work on the Back to the Future trilogy, you'll likely catch similar rhythmic patterns and melodic choices throughout this movie. While technically solid, the familiarity can feel distracting. I tend to prefer composers who adapt their musical voice to each project rather than repeating stylistic signatures. It doesn't ruin the experience, but it doesn't elevate it either. Ultimately, this is very much a turn off your brain and enjoy kind of movie. It's not trying to explore deep philosophical ideas or complex character arcs. What it does accomplish is the introduction of an iconic movie monster with its own rules, code of honor, and unforgettable design, a creature that would go on to become a staple of science fiction cinema. At the same time, it's impossible to deny the film's raw entertainment value. Predator is a relentless blast of adrenaline, a high-octane blend of action, adventure, sci-fi, horror, and thriller elements that still holds up as an exciting experience decades later. Set against the unforgiving jungles of Central America, the story follows a special forces team unknowingly walking into a trap that turns them from elite hunters into terrified targets. Director John McTiernan skillfully guides the film from standard action territory into full-fledged sci-fi horror, and the transition feels smooth rather than abrupt. The premise is strong, the environment is perfectly chosen, and the cast fits their roles exceptionally well. While the script doesn't dive deeply into character psychology, it gives each soldier enough personality to stand out without slowing the momentum. In the end, Predator may not be profound, but it is undeniably iconic, a muscular, suspenseful, and endlessly quotable action spectacle that still delivers a powerful punch. The film's cinematography makes brilliant use of its jungle setting, transforming the dense environment into a living, breathing source of tension. Slow, deliberate camera movements encourage the audience to scan every shadow and branch, mirroring the characters' own paranoia as they sense something watching them from the darkness. From the moment the cast is assembled, the pacing hits the ground running and barely eases up, propelling the story forward with relentless momentum. The editing smartly weaves together shots from the creature's perspective with those of its human prey, creating a seamless back and forth that never feels gimmicky or overindulgent. Even decades later, the visual effects remain impressive, aided by smart sound design and Alan Silvestri's thunderous musical score, which constantly hints at the danger lurking just beyond sight. The soundtrack alone heightens the unease, making every quiet moment feel like the calm before the storm. The ensemble cast, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Shane Black, Sonny Landham, and Richard Chavs, forms a convincing unit, with Arnold Schwarzenegger commanding the screen at the center. Their rugged physiques and tough guy personas naturally reinforce the hardened soldiers they portray, and their chemistry sells the idea that these men have fought and survived together before. Their banter, bravado, and camaraderie give the film personality beyond its action sequences. The alien hunter itself is a triumph of imagination and craftsmanship. Conceived with creativity by the writers, brought to life through Stan Winston's legendary design work, and physically performed with eerie precision by Kevin Peter Hall, the creature feels genuinely otherworldly. Its ability to blend into its surroundings and strike without warning adds an extra layer of terror that was groundbreaking at the time. Taken as a whole, Predator stands as a shining example of filmmaking where every element, direction, editing, sound, effects, music, and performances works together in perfect balance. It's endlessly rewatchable, immensely satisfying, and remains a high point of action and science fiction cinema. A true classic, a defining genre piece, and one of my personal all-time favorites, this is essential viewing for fans of action, sci-fi, or horror. Absolutely recommended. Nearly a quarter of a century later, Predator still feels remarkably fresh and engaging. Everything about it clicks. For anyone unfamiliar with the premise, which is hard to imagine, the story follows a squad of elite commandos led by Schwarzenegger at the peak of his stardom, who find themselves hunted by a deadly extraterrestrial warrior. It's a simple concept, but simplicity is its strength. So why does this movie endure while countless imitators have faded away? One major reason is Arnold himself. He may not be celebrated for subtle, dramatic range, but when it comes to projecting raw power, confidence, and larger-than-life heroism, few can rival him. His team, though not deeply developed, is instantly likable and memorable, making their fates genuinely impactful. The narrative is stripped down to its bare essentials: soldiers versus an alien in the jungle. There are minor threads involving deception and brotherhood, but they never bog the film down. The focus remains squarely on survival. The action is constant, intense, and brutally efficient. The direction favors clarity over flashy excess, proving that effective staging and strong atmosphere are far more important than hyperactive editing. The movie doesn't try to look cool, it simply is cool. The famous tagline claimed that nothing like it had ever been on Earth before, and in many ways, that statement applies to the film itself. There has never been another sci-fi action movie quite as pure in its execution. Everything that followed in the franchise may be entertaining in its own right, but none have fully captured the magic of the original. Critics once described Predator as a fusion of Rambo and Aliens, and while some viewed that as a negative, it actually speaks to the film's clever genre blending. It takes familiar elements and reshapes them into something surprisingly fresh. I first saw Predator at around 11 years old, and I still remember the moment it became clear this wasn't a standard action film. The discovery of a grotesquely mutilated body and the sudden disappearance of the film's comic relief character signaled a darker turn. You might sense his death coming, but the shock still lands. Predator isn't just a great action movie, it's a benchmark, and if there ever comes a day when I stop enjoying it, I'll be genuinely surprised. As a kid, I remember feeling deeply uneasy about this movie, to the point where I made the smart decision to turn it off and crawl into bed. Back then, I was no stranger to loud, explosive action movies, but even at a young age, I could sense something darker lurking beneath the surface. Watching it again decades later, I'm actually relieved I skipped it back then. The film relies more on implication than explicit gore, aside from the eventual unveiling of the predator, but that restraint somehow makes it even more disturbing. When the creature finally steps into the light, its grotesque design, vaguely reminiscent of the monstrosities from John Carpenter's The Thing, feels both like a payoff and a punishment for making it that far. At its heart, Predator plays like a twisted version of a standard military action adventure. What begins as a straightforward mission slowly mutates into a nightmare. The opening introduces us to a squad of hypermasculine commandos who embody peak 1980s action cinema. Fearless, heavily armed, and seemingly unstoppable, the helicopter entrance set to Long Tall Sally almost feels like a tongue-in-cheek tribute to American action hero excess. Every member of the team fits a recognizable mold. Arnold Schwarzenegger's gravel-voiced Dutch as the no-nonsense leader, Carl Weathers' Dylan as the smooth-talking operative with secrets, Jesse Ventura's Blaine as the swaggering heavy gunner, Bill Duke's Mac as the quiet bruiser, and Sonny Landham's Billy as the mysterious tracker. Director John McTiernan leans into these archetypes deliberately, only to dismantle them later. The initial assault on the guerrilla compound is pure spectacle. Explosions erupt, bullets tear through everything in sight, and flamethrowers paint the jungle in fire. It's intentionally overblown, bordering on self-parody, complete with macho banter and exaggerated heroics. But once that sequence ends, the movie begins shedding its action movie skin and revealing something far more sinister. Bodies start turning up in horrifying ways. Shapes move through the trees. Something watches from the shadows. The confident soldiers who once marched in formation slowly become panicked animals. Mac's descent into obsession after losing his closest friend is especially striking, turning him into a man fueled purely by rage and sorrow. Dylan, meanwhile, evolves into a more layered figure, ultimately finding redemption through sacrifice. And Dutch's journey is perhaps the most compelling of all. Deprived of his squad, firepower, and bravado, he's forced to rely on cunning and endurance rather than muscle alone. The jungle itself becomes a character, beautiful, dense, and suffocating, captured with a sense of scale that adds to the dread. The atmosphere elevates the movie beyond a simple shoot-'em-up. There's genuine suspense here, not just spectacle. The story doesn't wander into heavy philosophical territory, instead building toward a raw, primal showdown between man and monster. Yes, Dutch could have taken a more straightforward approach, but the filmmakers clearly understood the primal appeal of a one-on-one confrontation. Whether it's about honor, mutual respect, or simply cinematic tradition, the final duel delivers exactly what the genre promises: brutal, physical, and unforgettable. Kevin Peter Hall's Predator remains one of cinema's most iconic creatures, holding back its full reveal until the climax proves to be the right call, while earlier glimpses, its shimmering camouflage and strange, glowing blood, keep the tension high. The brief opening shot of the alien craft feels somewhat unnecessary, as the creature's presence alone already communicates its extraterrestrial nature. What truly sets the Predator apart is how it reverses the power dynamic. The ultimate hunters become the hunted, stripped of their dominance and reduced to instinct and fear. The inclusion of Anna, the lone civilian, adds another layer, helping establish the creature's strange code of conduct and grounding the chaos with a human perspective. When Dutch roars his legendary line about getting to the chopper, it no longer sounds like a confident command. It feels like a desperate cry from a man who just wants to survive. In the end, Predator stands as both a celebration of and a send-off for the classic 1980s action hero. Before McTiernan would redefine the genre with the everyman vulnerability of Die Hard, he delivered this savage deconstruction of macho invincibility. It's a gripping blend of action, horror, and survival, and it remains one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most intense and entertaining performances, muscle-bound spectacle infused with a chilling sci-fi edge. At its core, this film follows an elite group of soldiers, commanded by Dutch Arnold Schwarzenegger, who are dispatched on what appears to be a straightforward rescue operation deep inside a Central American jungle. What begins as a routine military mission quickly spirals into something far more terrifying when the squad realizes they are being stalked by an unknown, otherworldly hunter. One by one, the team is picked off by a ruthless extraterrestrial force that treats humans as trophies rather than opponents. The pacing is sharp and relentless. There's very little wasted time, no unnecessary side stories, and almost no distractions from the central conflict. The movie wastes no effort getting to the action, and once it starts, it rarely lets up. Even moments like the soldiers setting elaborate traps to catch their invisible enemy are packed with tension and suspense. You constantly feel the pressure building, as if danger is lurking just outside the frame. John McTiernan's direction deserves serious credit here. He balances explosive action with creeping dread, allowing the jungle itself to feel like an active participant in the story. The dense foliage, suffocating heat, and limited visibility create an atmosphere that feels hostile and claustrophobic. Enhancing this mood is Alan Silvestri's powerful musical score, which pulses with urgency and menace, perfectly matching the film's escalating sense of doom. The characters, while clearly cut from classic action movie cloth, each bring their own personality. Tough exteriors, dark humor, and memorable banter give the team a rough charm that makes their eventual fates hit harder. Elpidia Carrillo's Anna stands out as the lone major female presence, delivering a grounded and convincing performance that complements the testosterone-heavy ensemble. The creature design is one of the film's greatest strengths. The alien warrior is genuinely unsettling, from its towering physical presence to its advanced technology and animalistic behavior. The practical effects hold up impressively well, and the final confrontation between Dutch and the Predator feels both brutal and earned. It's a showdown that relies more on tension and ingenuity than pure firepower, which makes it especially satisfying. On a personal level, this movie carries a strong sense of nostalgia. I remember catching it on television years ago with my father, and more recently revisiting it with my younger brother. Despite the passage of time, it hasn't lost its impact. While I may not rank it quite as high as I once did, I still find immense enjoyment in returning to it and reliving that sense of awe. There's no pretense here. This is a straightforward, hard-hitting sci-fi action experience that fully embraces its identity. The story is simple because it doesn't need to be complicated. Everything builds toward the inevitable clash between an unstoppable alien hunter and one very determined human warrior. Casting Schwarzenegger was a stroke of genius, especially during the period when he was dominating the action genre. He's surrounded by a solid supporting cast, including Carl Weathers, Bill Duke, and Jesse Ventura, whose camaraderie feels believable even if their performances aren't subtle. Inside the Predator suit, Kevin Peter Hall gives physical life to what would become one of cinema's most iconic monsters. From its cloaking ability to its thermal vision perspective and deadly arsenal, the creature feels fresh and inventive even decades later. The effects work still looks convincing, which is a testament to the craftsmanship behind it. Ultimately, the film succeeds because of its perfect blend of suspense, explosive action, and atmosphere. Several sequences remain unforgettable, especially when paired with the oppressive jungle setting that seems to close in tighter as the story progresses. Silvestri's score reinforces this suffocating intensity, while the script delivers a steady stream of quotable one-liners without overdoing them. Rewatching Predator is also a reminder of how special the 1980s were for larger-than-life action cinema. Many films from that era haven't aged particularly well, but this one continues to shine. It has everything fans could want: guns, muscles, explosions, jungle warfare, humor, and a terrifying villain. And above all else, it has Arnold Schwarzenegger. For me, he embodies the spirit of 80s action, and this film stands as one of the strongest examples of that legacy. The plot stays simple, never getting in the way of the fun, and that's exactly why it works. The opening exists mainly to launch the mayhem. The film kicks off with an elite group of mercenaries dropped into a mysterious Central American jungle to retrieve captured hostages. At first, it seems like a standard military rescue operation, but lurking beyond the rebel forces is something far more terrifying. Hidden within the dense wilderness is a visitor from another world, using this jungle as its personal hunting ground. And its chosen targets, human beings. What has allowed Predator to endure for decades is its relentless, pulse-pounding action. The movie is pure adrenaline, soaked in sweat, gunfire, and muscle-bound bravado. Arnold Schwarzenegger leads a cast that looks perfectly built for jungle warfare, with heavy hitters like Jesse Ventura, Carl Weathers, and Bill Duke adding to the film's rugged intensity. Nearly every type of handheld weapon imaginable gets fired at some point, but nothing captures the insanity better than the infamous scene where the team unloads everything they have into the forest, shredding trees, foliage, and anything else in their path. It's excessive, ridiculous, and absolutely glorious. Another massive strength is the creature itself. the Predator remains one of cinema's most memorable monster designs. From the eerie glowing eyes and strange green blood to its cloaking technology and advanced arsenal, the alien feels genuinely dangerous. The film also makes a smart choice by not over-explaining the creature's origins. There's no lengthy exposition or detailed mythology. It simply exists to hunt, and that mystery only makes it scarier. If there's one area where the film doesn't fully excel, it's in the acting department. But honestly, nobody cues up Predator expecting award-worthy performances. This is a film that embraces its B-movie roots, elevated by confident direction and the undeniable star power of Schwarzenegger. Considering the era and budget, it's impressive how polished the final product feels, and even more impressive that it helped launch a franchise that's still alive decades later. The first half of the movie plays like a loud, chaotic action romp. It's entertaining but fairly straightforward. Then the Predator reveals itself and everything changes. Once the film shifts into survival mode and narrows its focus to a deadly game of cat-and-mouse between Dutch and the alien, it transforms into something truly special. Those final 20 minutes push the movie into legendary action territory. The jungle setting deserves praise as well. Its thick, shadowy environment becomes a character of its own, creating the perfect stage for ambushes, brutal deaths, and escalating tension. Interestingly, the movie even opens with a large-scale firefight that has little to do with the alien itself, yet it still enhances the overall experience by establishing the team's firepower before systematically tearing it away. For its time, the special effects hold up remarkably well. Practical creature work, optical camouflage, and explosive squib effects combine to create visuals that still feel tangible. And of course, the film is packed with iconic lines, "Stick around," and the eternally quotable "Get to the chopper," have long since become part of pop culture. Schwarzenegger's performance may not be subtle, but subtlety isn't the point. His physical presence, booming voice, and unstoppable aura make him the perfect centerpiece. He sells the idea that Dutch is the only man on Earth capable of standing toe-to-toe with this extraterrestrial menace. Predator further cements Arnold's image as one of cinema's ultimate action icons. While most of the supporting characters ultimately exist as victims, they're still given distinct personalities. Carl Weathers brings intensity as Dylan, and his strained history with Dutch adds a welcome emotional layer. Bill Duke, Jesse Ventura, Richard Chavs, and Sonny Landham each leave their mark. Billy in particular feels like a character who could have been explored more deeply, as he hints at a mysterious past and heightened awareness of danger. Elpidia Carrillo, the lone female presence, serves a functional role but isn't essential to the story. Thankfully, the film avoids forcing a romance subplot, keeping the focus on survival and combat. Director John McTiernan's talent is undeniable. It's remarkable that this was only his second feature film. His ability to balance action, suspense, and pacing is on full display. The man played a key role in shaping multiple legendary action franchises, and Predator stands as one of his finest accomplishments. Predator may not have invented the blend of action and horror, but it perfected it. Loud, violent, simple, and endlessly entertaining, it remains a benchmark for creature-driven action cinema. The visual effects hold up reasonably well, but the real showstopper is the Predator itself. The creature is terrifying, mesmerizing, and undeniably iconic. One of my all-time favorite moments happens when the Predator deliberately discards his weapons and removes his mask to face Schwarzenegger's Dutch in a raw one-on-one challenge. The design is jaw-dropping in the truest sense, disturbing, alien, and unforgettable. It's the kind of reveal that makes your skin crawl, perfectly punctuated by Arnold's legendary insult about the creature's looks. If you're a fan of classic 80s action, Arnold Schwarzenegger, science fiction, or horror, this film absolutely deserves its legendary status. What fascinates me most about Predator from a storytelling standpoint is how dramatically it shifts genres about 30 minutes in. The opening portion feels like a straightforward, big-budget action spectacle. We're introduced to a squad of elite commandos led by a larger-than-life action hero, sent on what appears to be a simple extraction mission. The film spends just enough time establishing basic personality traits. One guy is obsessed with crude jokes, another is a walking slab of muscle, others stand out mainly through their appearance. It's not deep characterization, but it's functional for the kind of movie it initially presents itself as. As they push through the jungle toward a rebel compound, subtle clues suggest something strange is lurking nearby, though these hints remain in the background while the mission takes center stage. The assault on the base is pure 80s excess, roaring gunfire, massive explosions, macho banter, and gravity-defying feats of marksmanship. It's loud, fast, and unapologetically over the top.